In the late autumn of 2009, I found myself behind the wheel, chauffeuring my friends home after a night of beer and bowling. Serving as the designated driver, I maintained sobriety comparable to a surgeon in the operating room. Opting for the back roads to circumvent highway construction, we traversed small residential areas and expansive farmland. Just shy of a mile from the initial drop-off point, where I would bid farewell to one of my friends, my headlights revealed a peculiar sight on the roadside. I promptly applied the brakes and decelerated. Emerging from the pitch darkness was a lone young boy, perhaps aged 7 or 8, aimlessly wandering down the road. Pulling to the side, I swiftly exited the vehicle, approaching him with concern. He halted upon noticing my approach, his gaze reminiscent of a nervous kitten peering from a cage in a pet store. It was apparent that tears had marked his cheeks. Introducing myself, I inquired about his well-being and the reason for being out there alone in the chilly night. Clad in a conspicuously oversized red polo shirt, green shorts, and flip-flops, he seemed to be enduring the cold without letting on. After a brief hesitation, he disclosed his name as Simon, revealing that he had run away from home and lost his way back. His shaky, almost monotonous whisper conveyed a fear of saying the wrong thing, worried that I might abandon him by the roadside. Upon learning his predicament, I asked for his address. Swiftly pulling out my cell phone, I sought his parents' contact details to ensure a safe return home. However, Simon claimed he couldn't recall the phone number. Meanwhile, my rowdy, intoxicated friends in the car behind me bombarded me with questions about the situation and how long we would be parked there. As one of my friends stepped out to relieve himself in the nearby foliage, I turned back to Simon, assuring him that I would take him home. Despite reaching out to hold his hand, he disregarded the gesture and walked past me towards the car. Assuming he might be in shock, I allowed him to occupy the now empty passenger seat. Instructing my inebriated friend, who had exited the car, to take a seat in the hatchback, I closed the passenger door once the boy was settled. Although he neglected to fasten his seatbelt, I refrained from insisting, aiming to avoid any sense of coercion or restraint. My intention was to keep him calm. Engaging the car in drive, I re-entered the street, adhering precisely to the speed limit. Despite the awkward introductions emanating from the back seat, my intoxicated friends attempting to connect with the situation, the boy remained fixated on the dashboard, his eyes never wavering. Shortly after, I observed him breaking into tears once more. The nature of these tears, whether they stemmed from pain, shame, or fear, remained ambiguous. Concerned, I inquired, "Are you all right?" To which he nodded, accompanied by a subtle hiccup. Sensing the need for some comfort, I informed him about a stash of fast food napkins beneath the seat. He reached down and used them to dab at his eyes. Contemplating whether to involve the authorities, I hesitated. However, the presence of an underage, intoxicated friend dissuaded me, as I suspected the police might divert their attention to my friends rather than the distressed child. Opting for a compassionate approach, I decided to drop off my two friends first, hoping it would alleviate the kid's sense of overwhelm. Subsequently, I planned to make a detour to the location he had mentioned as his home. 10 minutes later, I had successfully dropped off two of my 3 friends, and the remaining one had succumbed to sleep in the back seat. Transitioning from the quiet residential side streets, I merged back onto the main roads. After a few minutes of driving, I located the desired street. Engaging the kid in conversation, I asked, "How long were you walking?" His gaze remained fixed ahead, and he replied, "A long time." Continuing our journey, I eventually reached the sought-after road. Navigating through, I pulled into a cul-de-sac, advancing toward the very last house, discreetly nestled behind a cluster of trees. guiding the car into the driveway. I hadn't even come to a complete stop when the kid swung the door open and leaped out. "Thanks," echoed his cheerful voice, a stark contrast to its previous shaky undertones. He darted towards the house, where not a single light flickered, waving appreciatively. As he reached the front porch, I leaned over to shut the passenger door, only to be taken aback by the icy cold handle. It wasn't unpleasant, just notably chilled, as though it had been stored in a freezer for a few minutes. Upon raising my gaze, the kid had vanished without a trace. No sound of the door opening or closing reached my ears, and the interior of the house remained shrouded in darkness. A brief pause yielded no signs of activity. However, my friend's snores from the back seat served as a reminder that I had to get him home. Following the last drop-off, I parked my car and, feeling a sense of responsibility, opted to call the police for a welfare check on the kid. Providing the operator with the address, I waited anxiously. After a moment, she informed me that no one was registered as residing there. Baffled, I recounted the events to the operator, expressing my concern that the kid might be squatting alone on the property. Urging her to dispatch a patrol car, I feared an unsettling scenario unfolding. Arriving at the driveway past 2 a.m., I found 2 police cars already waiting for me. They had meticulously combed the entire property, scrutinizing the interior of the house. However, their search yielded no trace of anyone. The officers divulged that the previous year had witnessed a devastating kitchen fire, rendering most of the ground floor and half of the second floor uninhabitable. The current owners grappled with the insurance company over the property's fate. Relating the story of the boy, the officers asserted that if he had been present, he was long gone by then. Several days later, spurred by curiosity, I delved into the history of the house to uncover the mysteries surrounding it. After dedicating an hour to online research, I unearthed a poignant story. Years before the destructive fire, another family had inhabited the dwelling. Tragically, they had lost their son, Robin, in a freak accident. Robin met his end while riding his bike on the side of the road, and the very spot of his demise coincided with where I had encountered Simon. A chilling revelation followed. The boy's full name was Robin, but he also bore the middle name Simon. This revelation left me with a sensation akin to swallowing wet cement. Struggling to accept any supernatural implications, I reminded myself that Simon had been tangible, made of flesh and bone. Yet the lingering thought persisted. I had never actually touched him. Weeks later, I revisited the same location during daylight, allowing my car to idle as I observed the surroundings. Eventually, I drove away, leaving the enigmatic encounter behind me.